We now know all the style-specific relics for the upcoming RuneScape 3 leagues, and I am not here to tell you which one is best. I am here to guide your path towards your gear progression, whatever style you might pick. And obviously you can skip some of the parts if you don't want to grind a certain weapon or a certain ability, but you don't want to skip everything or you might end up fist fighting Zamorak.
Oh, that's hot.
There are some upgrades that apply to every combat style and you want to get these decently early. These include 90 summoning for Kalg or 96 summoning for Ripper. These are summoning familiars that boost your DPS by quite a bit. Especially Kalg in critical strike situations is really important. You will want to get 95 prayer for Soul Spit and a damage boosting prayer early on. If you're coming from old school, Soul Spit is an overhead prayer that you can flick to that heals you when you do damage, but during its uptime you won't be getting the benefit of a protection prayer. And Soul Spit flicking is one of the most important survival tools in the game, as protection prayers aren't 100% active like they are in old school, so Soul Spit will mitigate the chip damage that you take. Archaeology brings plenty of benefits to the player in terms of combat power, but the most important one early game is to get 56 Archaeology and do some barrels for Berserker's Fury Relic that will give you a damage boost based on your missing health. And if you want to keep grinding Archaeology, you can eventually get another Ring of Vigor passive from it. Overloads are a huge stat boosting benefit that give you every single stat in the game, and it keeps refreshing itself for a 5-minute duration. Getting this is very important on a new account, and you can get this by getting 90 Herblore and boosting, or by getting 96 Herblore. And Elder Overloads are just a better variant of these, giving you a higher stat boost from level 106 Herblore that you can boost from 100. Getting Tendrils abilities is nice for every style but Necro, and you can get this by completing the dig site quest. Then obviously getting a Fire Cape is very important for account progression, and in RuneScape 3 there's a better version of a Fire Cape called the Kiln Cape, and you can get this for every single style. So you get a Fire Cape first, and then you can go and get your style-specific Kiln Cape, and that can be even further upgraded to a Zuck Cape later on. And in RuneScape 3, getting a normal mode suck kill, which is what you did for the cape, is much easier than completing the Inferno in old school. The hard mode suck can be a bit more tricky, but that only gives you the combined soft cape for every style, which you won't be needing in the leagues because you're kind of style locked. And I would recommend getting at least entry level invention perks like P6, E4 or something a bit under that early on, and then later you can upgrade into better invention perks. Devotion is a defensive ability that makes your protective prayers protect you completely, so you take no damage from attacks if you're playing the correct style. This lasts for 10 seconds and is a very useful damage reduction tool. You can obtain this by killing the boss outside of God Wars. Amulet of Souls is a very good amulet you can get in the game, and it will make your protection prayer stronger and also give you additional healing from Soul Sweat. It's also a very high stat boosting amulet, so it's basically best in slot before Essence of Finality, which upgrades from this amulet. And you can get this by completing Reaper tasks. There's also some league specific passives that come online when you unlock a relic, so they're relic tier passives. And it's hard for me to recommend which ones to get first because we won't know what relic tiers they're in. So basically, when you get these, start using them. Especially the Vigor passive is really nice. It refunds you 10% adrenaline when you cast an ultimate ability, so it helps you with adrenaline management a lot. And another adrenaline management tool you can get from this is the Infernal Puzzle Box, which means that you will never lose adrenaline outside of combat. Without it, you will start losing adrenaline when you drop combat, and this will remove the need of stalling with defensive abilities to keep adrenaline up while you're doing stuff to not drop below 100 when starting a fight or waiting for your friends, so it's really nice we get this for free. It also unlocks all the prayer books and the mage books, and this is helpful for different utility things and damage, and especially nice for magic that can utilize more of the spells. This just removes the need to grind a lot of the quest lines that aren't actually doing combat. There's also some late game general upgrades that I feel like you should already have some good gear before you start going for this. And one of the most iconic ones is the Praisal Codex from Next Angel of Death, which is a group boss that gives you the maximum amount of drops from 7 people or below. So you need to have a group of 7 or under. And probably something like 4-man groups is gonna be the best way to do this. And probably the coolest upgrade for every style is the Essence of Finality Amulet. It can store a weapon special attack inside of it, and you can even have multiple of these and switch them between for different special attacks in combat. Genesis Shard is a stat boosting item that makes your tier 95 equipment go up to tier 100. Well, tier 95 weapons go up to tier 100. And this is a nice to have buff, but it's nothing super important. You can do everything without it, but it's a small damage bonus that you can get at the end game. Cinderbane gloves are gloves that work very well with poison, so everything that is poisonable, these will absolutely shred, and they're hybrid gloves, making them best in slot for every single style in encounters where poison is applicable. At the late game, you want to start thinking about your invention perks. You want to get Biting 4 at least, and some good other armor perks can be found in the wiki. You also want to get best in slot weapon perks, at least P6 AS4, and preferably P6 AS4 E2, but you probably don't want to spend your time farming for this. There's also the book slot, and early game you want to get Chas or Wen book because it's really easy to get, and then later on get a full book or a Grim or in Scripture of a Mascot can work as well, but full and Grim are definitely better. And you can weave in these general upgrades, like get the early ones pretty early on, and then the later ones you can get whenever during your late game grinds. You can switch it up and do different things. And I am not here to tell you which combat style you should pick or which one is better. Well, I can maybe make a quick tier list of what I think is better than others, but I want to make the case for every single combat style and the use case for them and why people should pick them if they want to go that route. Why should you pick Necromancy? Necromancy is by far the easiest combat style to use, and it was designed this way. The rotations Necromancy uses are pretty straightforward and simple, but on the other hand, it doesn't have as much skill expression as the other styles. Necromancy comes online faster than any other style, apart from maybe melee because of the relic tier passive, but we'll get to it later. You have very easy access to tier 90 gear, which means that you can fast forward your progression and get to endgame combat much faster than the other styles. And even the best in slot items for this style are the easiest to get because there's only a couple bosses you have to farm. Also, the combat relic works really well with Necromancy because Necromancy doesn't have a good way to generate adrenaline, so the double adrenaline from basics will make a huge difference in the case of Necromancy compared to the other styles. And I feel like Necromancy can also utilize the CDR bonus better than others, but I have no hard data on this and I can't be asked to do the math right now, but it just feels like it's gonna be useful. So let's look at the Necromancy specific progression. You first want to complete Killy's Task mini-quest, which is a in-game progression system for your Necromancy gear, and this will take you all the way to tier 90. And when it gets to the split paths at tier 70, I would recommend you go to tier 90 tank armor first, because the bosses you have to do with those are much easier, and then upgrade your weapons to tier 90, and then go and get the power armor. And for the materials that you will be needing for this Killy's Task mini-quest, you will need to kill some Hermod, which is a pretty easy Necromancy only boss, and Krill, which is a God Wars Dungeon 1 boss, and both of these can be killed with Necromancy very easily, even in the Bane game, so you won't be having any struggles here. But you will need to grind up to 80 smithing for all the upgrades. Then I recommend you will get a Sorgoth's ring from a quest requirement for a dragon, or an occultist ring from Osseous. These are necromancy rings that improve your abilities by giving you stacks in one or the other ways you can get stacks. And specifically for necromancy, because you will be going to Raziel soon, I would recommend you go and get the Salve Amulet E from Haunted Mine, and maybe even the Undead Slayer perk for your armor, and get the soft cape at this point before Raziel. This will speed up your Raziel grind a lot, and don't worry, Suck in RuneScape 3 isn't as hard as Inferno, like I said before, and the Suck Cape bonus for Necromancy is absolutely huge. Then I would recommend you group up with some friends and do AOD for tier 99 prayer, and then go farm some hard mode Nakatraf for a shard. Then you can go to Amaskut for a Nexus or a shard. So you can kinda skip between these three. These are all the stat buffs, and doing them in any order is fine. And that's it. That's how simple getting Necro upgrades is. There's still the generic upgrades, but these are all the Necro specific ones. I even included a couple generic ones because I didn't have much in here. But yeah, let's move on. Why you should pick melee. Melee has the best burst damage in-game, and it hits insanely hard inside of Zerg, and if you like hitting big numbers, this is definitely the style for you. It has the best combat relic in the leagues with more damage and more passive healing. You also get increased range on all of your melee attacks, allowing for some cool new tech. I feel like melee is gonna be really fun, but I would only recommend it for more experienced players, or at least to people who are willing to go through some struggles to get the gear they want. Melee has a unique synergy with smithing, where you can smith all the way up to tier 90 gear, and you can do even masterwork armor, which is almost best insult armor in the game. But stopping at Elder Rune is fine as well. For the early game, I would recommend you get a halberd type weapon, because it will speed up your leveling a lot. And getting any halberd up to crystal halberd is gonna be great. And because of the flat damage boost bonus that the melee passive gives, you're gonna be dealing a lot more damage than expected, even with these low level weapons. After leveling up a bit, I feel like you should go get some armor unless you went the smithing route, but good armor options would be Bandos armor or any armor from Barrows. Bandos is a bit better, but Barrows is a decent option as well. And for your weapons, you can go to Arc-Claykor for tier 85 melee dual wields, or you can go to Vindicta for Anima Core of Zaros armor and a Dragon Rider lance that is a tier 85 halberd range weapon, which is really good. You can also skip the armor, or you can get Malevolent from Rots. There's options here on what you want to do. But eventually you want to get to Araxor and get the Noxus Sight. I feel like this is a mandatory weapon for you. It's a tier 90 halberd and it's gonna be great for everything. And with this Noxus Sight, you can go to ED2 and clear that very easily to get your best insult ability codices, which are Greater Fury, Greater Barge, and a Greater Fillery. These are all massive upgrades for your account. Please do not underestimate this. Especially Greater Barge allows you to bleed a channeled ability, which does a lot of damage and basically turns like a 20k hit into a 50k hit. And around this time, make sure you've done all the general upgrades, and also try and do some AoD for the Codex at least, and get a Essence of Finality. Try and get those things done around here. And yeah, you most likely want to be putting Dragon Claws inside the Essence of Finality. If you're someone who likes doing Slayer and you've traded Slayer, enhanced Gloves of Passage are great from Magister. But this is 115 Slayer requirement, so I don't expect everyone to go and get this. But if you train Slayer anyway, it's a nice upgrade to have. Then we start getting into some harder content. Telos is a hard skill check for many people, and it's a very mechanical boss and it can't be brute force with damage. So if you're willing to learn Telos or know how to do him already, then getting a Zaros God Sword here would be amazing. I especially think that the CGS special attack is gonna be great in the leagues because of how the melee relic works, and how you're incentivized in camping melee and have extra adrenaline to actually use it. But if you're not comfortable with Telos, you can skip this step, or you can farm him low at rage, that's also possible, but your drop rates may be terrible. Now we're getting to the really good stuff. Look at the EZK from Zuck, the best melee weapon in the game. And this requires you to do melee Zuck. And unfortunately, you're gonna have to farm hard mode Zuck with melee, which is not gonna be ideal, but I'm sure you can do it with these relic buffs. But if you don't want to farm Zuck, you can also go and get Lengths from Arc-Claykor, which are a nice dual wield weapon, but they are just not as good as EZK, but they have their uses and are a nice option to have. You don't really need to have both, so getting just the EZK is fine. Then you also want to grind the vestments from Zamorak, which is the best armor you have, and it is only tier 70 defensively, but gives you massive damage boost and a longer Zerg, and are tier 100 in terms of offensive power, I believe. You can also go and grind the Masterwork Spear now, and different switches like a lunging switch and flanking switches you can get early on, but I wanted to keep this simple. If you want a more detailed look into everything you can grind for, you can go to PVME and check their upgrade order lists. These aren't really viable for Iron Man, but they can give you an idea of different items you can go and get for different styles if you want to go for absolute best in slot. Overall, I don't think you can go wrong with melee, but definitely the bosses that you have to grind can be a bit awkward in melee gear, and especially like ED2 and Zuck can be really annoying when meleeing. But I think you're gonna have a good time if you pick melee, but maybe a harder time than other styles. But then again, it received the best buffs from the relic, so maybe it is the best style. Who knows? Range and Magic have some common upgrades you can get compared to the other two styles, which are the Vault Wake's Quest for Death's Witness and Sunshine. These are super important abilities. They are your damage boosting ultimates and you need to get them ASAP. Then there's a Planted Fate switch, and this extends the timer of your ultimate ability. So you want to get this as fast as possible as well. And later on you can make this a passive without needing to make it a switch. There are also the Raid Codices that can give you Corruption Shot and Corruption Blast, and these are decent AoE bleed abilities that are sometimes utilized in damage rotations, especially early on. These are not as important as the ultimate abilities. There is also the Blast Diffusion boots that make your detonate hit faster, it's pretty nice, and then the Fleeting boots that make you able to move during your rapid fire. These are decent upgrades and you can get them from Raksha or Dinosaur Slayer tasks. Why you should pick Magic? I think Magic is a great combat style for beginners because it has a really low skill floor. You just spam G-Conk and you're probably doing fine. But when you get into the higher level of combat, you can do kind of interesting things with four-ticking, different kind of rotations. There's a lot of skill ceiling here, and I think that's a great thing. It's a really well-designed combat style. Magic also has great gear progression. I feel like you're doing varied and fun content constantly when you pick Magic. And it also has a 50% crit damage in late game, which will mean like 10 to 13% overall damage buff and like 24% higher hitting crits, or maybe 26% higher hitting crits, something like that. It also has lower hits, and most of the damaging abilities that do high hits do multiple hits instead, so you won't be reaching the damage caps. And this is important in case there's other combat relics that will do high damage or give you high stat boost, like we've seen the God Book relic now, that will give you a lot of stats that might take you to hit cap, especially when using melee, and might not be as impactful. Let's start with the Magic progression, shall we? The first thing you want to do after like the early game stuff, you want to get the Gothic Staff from Mage Arena. And this staff will later become your Essence of Finality weapon that you will store there, so no matter what, go and grab this staff. You're also gonna need some rune pouches, and you can get these from rune crafting and crosses. These are made from magical thread that drops when doing rune crafting, and then you can use crosses flakes to enforce them to better rune pouches that hold up to 4 runes. And after this, you have a couple of paths you can do. You can either do Dungeoning to 80 and buy a Chaotic Staff. There's also the tier 70 Crystal Staff angle, but you need 50 agility for this and it costs you 1 mil. Or you could also do the tier 1 combat achievements and do barrows. And the reason you do the tier 1 combat achievements is that you get a straight teleport through the tunnels, so doing barrows will be a lot faster. And getting an RM stat is like 1 in 350 without any of the leaks modifiers, so you will be here for a couple hours. After obtaining a decent weapon, you can go to Krill for Subjugation Armor, and then go to Seren for tier 80 weapons. You can also get the armor from Seren, and it's gonna be a nice upgrade, but it's not gonna be that crazy over the Subjugation, but you wanna definitely get one or the other. But if you're really into Slayer, you can also do Wieldy Slayer for Obliteration. And this will be a tier 87 magic staff, so it's gonna be better than the Hellwar weapons. After this, you definitely want to go to Kerapac for Greater Concentrated Blast and Kerapac's Wrist Straps. These are really good upgrades, and the Greater Concentrated Blast is like the best ability for magic. You want to be constantly spamming this, so definitely go here and get this. And then you can go to Vorago for Tectonic Armor. Vorago is gonna be a lot easier in leagues because of the hit chance bonus you get. Vorago is one of the only bosses where hit chance actually matters in RuneScape, where you're like at really low hit chance, and here you're just gonna be at 100, making it a lot easier than it normally would be. And then going to Araxor for a Noxus Staff is gonna be a great upgrade. If you got Obliteration from Wieldy Slayer, you can skip Araxor, but if you didn't take the Invention Relic and need a Biting 4, then you might as well go grind Araxor now. It drops the tier 90 Noxus Staff, and at this point you want to make sure that you've completed some of the earlier grinds from the general list. You want to get like most of them done, but not from the harder side yet. And then you want to go to Nakasha for tier 95 weapons. And you can get these from normal mode Nakasha, so you shouldn't have any trouble in obtaining these. And they come with an incredibly powerful special attack that is a super high hitting bleed. And then you wanna go grind some hard mode care pack for an FSOA. It is the best magic weapon in the game, and you also need 95 crafting in combining the pieces. And this is not a case where you want to get one or the other set of weapons, you definitely want both, because a camping FSOA is great, and then using the special attack from the one orb is also really useful. And this also, if you want to go into it, allows vortexing. And after this, I would recommend you go for Raksa and get Crater Chain. It's gonna be a really nice quality of life upgrade for the next sort of bosses you might want to do. And then you have your two different endgame armor set options, which is a Musket for Resplendence of Tumeken and ED2 for Elite Tectonic. They are both good. I would say a Musket's armor is slightly better, but it takes you longer to obtain that, so you can pick whatever you want to go for. Also, there's a couple abilities that might be useful, like Magma Tempest from Zac. It's not a huge upgrade, but it has its uses. And a Greater Sonic Wave after you do Raksha from Armored Phantoms, but this requires 113 Slayer, so getting there might be a bit of a pain. Also, during the time you would normally grind Reaver's Ring, you could also grind a Channeler's Ring, which is pretty good for magic. It's like slightly better than Reaver's Ring at some points, so slightly worse at some points. It's definitely a side grade mostly. Overall, I think you can't go wrong with picking Mage. It's gonna be a lot of fun, but the relic doesn't really give it that much. The extra damage is nice, but the cooldowns and the extra adrenaline aren't gonna be that impactful. So maybe magic isn't gonna be that much better than it is in the normal game, but we don't really know what the other combat relics do yet, so take this with a grain of salt. I think magic has the most fun upgrade order out of any style. I feel like you're gonna have a lot of fun trying to get your gear, and the gear progression part of the game is gonna be the most fun with magic. Why you should pick range. Range is my favorite combat style in the entire game, and I feel like it has the most complex and interesting system outside of hybriding. But unfortunately in this league, range just doesn't get much love. The abilities it gets doesn't really give it much. But at least if you pick the Invention Relic, you can make a lot of dummies, and you can have some dummy drop under a boss and have more adrenaline than you should have while you're fighting it. And this could be some interesting tech that people could use, but I'm not sure how much mileage you're gonna get out of this, especially because you can't drop dummies in every boss fight. But I don't think it necessarily needs all the upgrades, because it is the highest DPS style in the game if you have base gear, but early on it's quite bad, so it's gonna be a struggle getting into it. So I would recommend range to aspiring PvMers, or you have some skill in the game but need that extra bit of push to learn range. The most important thing you wanna get is the Avos accumulator for saving your arrows. You have a 95% chance to save arrows passively already, and this will take it to like 97, 98, whatever, something like that. And after that, I would recommend getting some crafting levels for Black Dragonite armor, but because you already have the max accuracy from your combat style, from the relic, you could also make melee armor from smithing, and this actually applies to every style. If you want to just make melee armor before you start getting power armor, that's totally viable. And then you're gonna need 50 agility to get a crystal bow, and then you want to go with your crystal bow to fight some Armadillo for tier 70 power armor. And at some point while trading range, you want to get 93 crafting so you can make Sarenic armor. It's tier 90 armor and almost best in slot. And it can even be upgraded to tier 92 at 81, but that's totally not necessary, and there's a better armor set later. And then you want to grind some Herblore to get 85 Herblore for super anti-fire potions, and then go to kill Queen Black Dragon. This will reward you with a Royal Crossbow that is a tier 80 crossbow, and it's gonna be really good for the next part. Here you might want to consider getting the Stalker's Ring from DKs, but it's an annoying grind, and I can understand if you want to do it later, but it's the best insult ring for you. And another annoying grind that you will have to do is getting Slayer up to Dark Beast to grind a Dark Bow, or to do clues for a Zamorak Bow, and you will put whatever you want to get to the Essence of Finality you get. And these are almost similar special attacks. Zamorak Bow is considered slightly better right now because it uses less adrenaline but does slightly less damage, and Dark Bow does more damage but uses more adrenaline. But with the League's Relic, it might be better than the Zamorak Bow. Usually skilled players use both of these, but I don't think it's necessary to get both in the leagues. And then you want to go to Araxor for a Noxus bow, and it is a tier 90 bow that's gonna be best in slot for a bit. You could also do this before the Stalker Swing, before Dark Bow EF, but maybe not before QBD. I guess you could do this with the tier 70 weapon because of the accuracy buffs, so there's ways to mix and match these as well. After you get your Dox Bow, it's time to head to Raksha to get Greater Ricochet, and this is an absolute must. It is the best ability in the game. After getting your Gricko, I think it's time to head to ED3 for an ECB, and you wanna put this inside an EOF. Not the same one as the Dark Bow, but now you will be switching amulets. The ECB special attack turns your Soul Spit healing into damage and times it by 4, so this will be doing absolutely massive damage at every combat encounter. And then it's time to head to the big bad Telos for an SGB, and this is the second best weapon in the game for ranged. This special attack works like the sight in old school, where it does damage based on the target size, so the bigger the target, the more damage this will do, and you can hit absolutely nuts numbers with this. And then eventually you wanna get the Zamorak for a Bow of the Last Guardian, the most fun weapon in the game in my opinion. The stacks will give you extra damage and it has a good special attack. The utilization of it is way beyond the scope of this video, but you can find guides for it I'm sure. And then going to hard mode Warcat for Elite Dracolich armor, and you can do this in either order. The Elite Dracolich armor will boost your rapid fire, so that after your rapid fire the next 4 hits will basically be guaranteed crits. Not really, but it's close, it's like 90%. And that's it, we're done with every single combat style. Obviously I left out some minor upgrades and different upgrades that you could get, and cross-style upgrades like using an off-style SGB is pretty common. But I try to include the most important things that are not too annoying to grind for during a league. Like, I didn't include Limitless because it's so much Slayer you have to do for it, and I don't think anyone's gonna have fun AFKing for 50 hours in a Slayer dungeon just to get an ability that is like slightly better and even worse with the league's buffs. But I'm curious, which combat style will you pick? Let me know in the comments down below. I feel like I'm gonna be picking either Mage or Melee. I'm still torn between the two. I think Melee will be a really fun and powerful style, but doing ED2 for Melee seems a bit iffy and it just sounds a bit less fun in the gearing part of it, where Magic, the gearing part, shines. But then again, when you get everything for Melee, it's gonna be super fun to use it, so I'm not exactly sure what's gonna be my game plan here. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, that helps me with the algorithm, and we all bow down to the algorithm. See ya!